WCCO News starts now with breaking news.
Good afternoon. We are following devastating breaking news in Burnsville right now. 2 officers and a paramedic are dead after a shooting early Sunday morning. We're getting a live view of squad cars lining the street near Hennepin Healthcare in downtown Minneapolis. We've learned that this procession will be escorting the bodies of the fallen officers and a paramedic to a medical examiner's office. You can see the huge show of support for not only these officers and their families, but the Burnsville Police Department and the other agencies involved. This is video from the scene in Burnsville this morning. You can see the large law enforcement presence and the large law enforcement response at Terrace Oaks West Park around 6 o'clock this morning. Law enforcement officials in Dakota County told us that there is an active situation with weapons on 33rd Avenue South. Neighbors in the area told us they saw police in the area as early as 2 a.m. and heard a loud bang, followed by gunfire around 5 this morning. When our cameras got to the scene, we saw SWAT vehicles and officers holding their guns. One of those SWAT vehicles had what appeared to be bullet holes in the windshield. We are still working to find out when authorities will provide further updates on the deadly shootings. We will update you on this breaking story when we learn more. We want to go back to this live look in downtown Minneapolis. This is just outside Hennepin Healthcare, and it's difficult to see with the shadows and the sun, but there are literally dozens and dozens of squad cars from all around the metro who are lining up. We understand this is going to be a procession to the medical examiners, escorting the bodies of the 2 fallen officers and the paramedic. We just have learned that there will be a 4 o'clock press conference in which authorities are going to share more information. We really do not know at this point what exactly led up to this, what is still might be happening down in Burnsville at that scene, and we'll share more on this breaking news when we learn it. Okay, we can tell you that this is a live shot of downtown Minneapolis. What's gathering right there are police squad cars. They are ready to escort the bodies of 2 fallen police officers and a paramedic who were shot and killed this morning as they answered a domestic call. We've been told that. We don't have a lot of other details. This all happened in Burnsville after a domestic call. We do know that the 2 officers are shot. We have not confirmed that they're actually with the city of Burnsville. There also is a paramedic who was shot and killed. I was told that the paramedic who was shot and killed was shot while he was providing aid to one of the injured officers. Right now, the state, the community is in mourning. The governor has ordered all flags in Minnesota to be flown at half-staff immediately. Obviously, so many questions here about what happened. We would like to know and find out exactly what we can. But going back to this morning, it was around 6 o'clock this morning that we started hearing traffic on our police scanners in our newsroom of shooting, shots fired, a large amount of police officers. Throughout the morning, we weren't sure exactly what was happening until we were able to confirm just before 10:30 that in fact 2 officers had been shot and killed, 2 police officers responding to a call, and also a paramedic responding to that call. This is video from earlier today. This was shot around 9 o'clock this morning, and what you have there, you can see the armored vehicles that were carrying the police officers to the scene. Our photographer on the scene reports that one of the armored vehicles, you could see that it had been shot, gunshot. There were bullet holes in the window of the armored vehicle. There are still a huge law enforcement presence at the scene, and again, we're not sure exactly why. We also heard on the scanners that there were people taken out of the home, people who were apparently children, for safety. Again, these details are coming in very piecemeal. What we do know is the worst possible news, that 2 officers have been killed and a paramedic has been killed, all in the line of duty, all responding to a domestic call. And we're looking at live now. You can see those are all squad cars lining up there at Hennepin Health. They are lining up for what we're told is going to be a procession that will take the bodies of the fallen officers and the fallen paramedic to the medical examiner's office. Obviously, with a situation like this, every single thing has to be done perfectly, and the process has to be honored in order to make sure that the investigation is proper and to honor the lives of these officers and the paramedic who've been lost. We also heard that there was one other officer injured. We have not gotten any more details on that. Obviously a very, very sad situation. Hennepin Health is just a few blocks here from our WCCO TV studios. Historically, it has been the place where police officers, no matter where they're shot in the metro, with the possible exception of the north side of Minneapolis, they are brought to this level 1 trauma center because they have the experience with gunshots, they have the experience with devastating trauma incidents. And when that happens, and I've been there many times, you can see the urgency, people running around trying to get more people in, and there's none of that. This is a very quiet, somber, sobering scene, an indication of the horrible tragedy that has occurred. Again, we are waiting for more information on exactly what happened because we don't know what happened, what led to this, except that it was a domestic call. I can tell you that police officers will tell you, and many, many have, that that domestic calls are exactly the most dangerous kinds of calls that they can possibly take. Now, we know that an honor guard of local deputies is surrounding the bodies. They will not be left alone until they are buried. This is a customary act of respect. Also told in an investigation like this, first step is traditionally to get bodies to the medical examiners first for investigation. Governor Tim Walz has ordered flags to fly at half staff starting at sunrise tomorrow. That's after 2 officers and a paramedic were shot dead while responding to a call early this morning in Burnsville. The governor released a statement saying, quote, "We received horrific news from Burnsville this morning while responding to a call of a family in danger. 2 police officers and 1 firefighter lost their lives and other officers were injured. We must never take for granted the bravery and sacrifices our first responders make each and every day. Today, the families of these public servants received the call they knew was possible, but hope would never come. My heart is with those grieving families. The state of Minnesota stands ready to support in any way we can. This is a tragic loss for our state. Our Department of Public Safety is coordinating with local law enforcement to conduct an investigation. The Lieutenant Governor also said, quote, "There are no words to describe a loss of this magnitude in our Burnsville and first responder community. The tragedies that unfolded this morning are every family's worst nightmare, yet our first responders stay selflessly committed to keeping Minnesotans safe every day," she said. "I am immensely grateful for the sacrifices and service of our police officers, firefighters, and medics, and my heart is heavy with grief for the 3 heroes we lost today." That statement was from Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan. We are expecting this procession with the bodies of the fallen officers and, according to the governor, a fallen firefighter who was acting as a paramedic at the scene. Oftentimes they play that dual role in emergencies and crises. The firefighter, we are told that he or she was actually providing care to one of the wounded police officers when they were struck and killed. A moment of just remarkable heroism in Burnsville. And I must say, a tragedy of really epic proportions to have 3 first responders killed in one setting, in one morning, on a beautiful sunny morning, on a Sunday morning when people are on their way to church and just getting up, is the worst possible news. And it's a reminder that even in our suburbs, even in some places that people think of as quiet and peaceful and removed from violence that people tend to associate perhaps with the inner city, these things do happen, and they happen with frequency, not on this magnitude, of course. The procession there, squads lining up again. There are squads from all over the area. Susan Elizabeth Littlefield was there earlier this morning. She was telling me that there were squads from all over the metro who responded to show their respects, as well as firefighters from all over the metro. And again, we're hearing from that governor's statement that it was a firefighter who was responding to aid the fallen officers. And this is something that, again, heroism beyond description. We are live here and we are still waiting on this. We are going to share more on this breaking news throughout the day. I don't know if you folks want to keep on this here. Okay, we are standing by here. That is actually a shot of, I believe, City Hall. It's a little bit, the monitor's at quite a distance from me. No, that is not City Hall. That is Hennepin County Medical Center. That is where, again, it's a level 1 trauma center. It's where police and state troopers and deputies prefer to bring their people when something like this, the unthinkable, happens, because the people there are trained and are responsive to what has happened and what could happen and how to treat these gunshot wounds. Tragically, 2 officers have died. A paramedic has died. We are waiting now for the procession to start. It is something that is expected to start very shortly. Hennepin County Medical Center, just a few blocks from WCCO television. That is the entrance to the emergency room, this side right there that you're looking at, and right underneath that skyway, that is the emergency room as far as I can make out. I've been outside there many times and in other situations when there has been police officers brought there, and oftentimes the news, as desperate as that is better because they can be aided. This time we have the worst of all possible news that two officers and a firefighter have been killed in the line of duty this morning. And I know, Susan Elizabeth Littlefield, you were out at the hospital this morning. And we are talking to you about, well, we'll talk to Susan Elizabeth Littlefield here in just a second. The Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension said they are working on this case. There are many people who are obviously just shocked and saddened by what happened. Susan Elizabeth Littlefield was at the hospital earlier this morning, and you described for us a very, very somber scene.
Yep, somber, solemn, those are the words I would use. And you know, Esme, you and I both have been doing this long enough where when you get to a scene and people are not rushing around, you know something is terribly wrong.
Right.
You could just tell when you got there, everyone was still. I saw one officer with their hat across their chest just sitting there looking like that. And you can see all the people showing up. Since then, I've been making some calls to different law enforcement around the metro, and they told me that it's kind of a word of mouth thing right now, but they're all getting together. They're coming up with a plan of how to support their fallen brothers, sisters. We're waiting for details exactly on who it was, but they all feel it. It's all personal to every law enforcement officer, every single one of them. I talked to several of them who said, Susan Elizabeth, I woke up this morning to a text. You know, word got out fast. And he said, you know, look at this response right here. There's Woodbury, there's Park Police, that's all Inver Grove Heights Police. There's people from all over the metro, and they just showed up. You know, asked one officer, I said, who organized this? They said, you know, it's just kind of an organic thing. We just come, we answer, you know, we feel it. And something else too, Esme, I just learned that was really powerful to me is that there is an honor guard. So there is going to be an officer with the officers' bodies until they are buried. They will not be left alone. That's what one officer told me this morning. They said, we're putting our efforts together. So we are going to stand watch 24 hours a day on these bodies. We will not let them be alone in this.
Wow. Such a tragedy as we look at the squads lining up, getting ready for a procession from Hennepin County Medical Center. Just looking at my Twitter feed, it is filled with comments and prayers from people like Senator Mark Johnson, the minority leader of the Minnesota Senate. My prayers are with our law enforcement officers, first responders, and Burnsville residents this morning. Also, we've heard from Lisa Damus. Just about every single prominent law enforcement person in the state has responded. Earlier, I saw comments from Representative Angie Craig and Representative Betty McCollum. This is a tragedy of monumental proportions.
Yeah, monumental.
And you know, I have not, you know, done the research here, but I will tell you, Susan Elizabeth, my memory goes back to a terrible day 30 years ago in 1994 when 2 St. Paul police officers were ambushed in their car, and a police canine unit, a canine officer, was also killed. The scope of this, I don't recall having seen since. It is that big. Obviously, we have lost officers in the line of duty, and every death is a terror and a horrible, horrible
Everything
thing.
matters, but what you're saying, I think, is that in the metro area, we have not seen this for a while.
Yeah, and we'll have to verify that. This is just my memory, but I do remember that tragic day in St. Paul 30 years ago, and there were two very young officers who died, and also a police canine officer who is regarded as an officer by the police officers because they are there in the first line of defense, trying to help who they can and trying to protect the officers and keep the public safe as well.
Absolutely. And something else too, Esme, that really pops out to me about this is that a paramedic, a fire officer, someone who was trained as a medic through the fire department, also lost their life in this. And we don't hear about that often. We know that any first responder is in the line of danger. But I can't remember the last time we've covered a medic being killed in a situation like this.
We just have new information from the BCA. The person responsible for the shootings and the killings of 2 police officers and a firefighter has died. We do not know the details of his death. There is going to be a news conference at 4 o'clock when there are so many questions that are going to be hopefully answered. It's extraordinary because you hear these calls in the newsroom. We sit in a newsroom where we hear the police scanners going, and domestics happen many times an hour, Susan Elizabeth, and you hear people responding, and it took a turn just before 6 o'clock. We could hear, actually our producer Sandra Lind heard shots fired
through the police scanners.
And we sent our photojournalists down there, and it was pretty obvious something very serious was happening. This is the armored carrier, just the one that we were looking at just a couple of frames ago, that was actually shot out in the window, which is extraordinary. But again, we don't have details on what happened, but the BCA has reported to our newsroom that the person responsible for these heinous murders of 2 police officers and a firefighter has died. And while we're told it was a paramedic, the governor of Minnesota has identified this person as a firefighter.
And we know they are cross-trained.
And they are cross-trained, exactly.
So that's where that comes in.
And you and I were talking because there are different levels, but oftentimes it is the firefighters who are first on the scene who act as the initial paramedics. So we'll see with that. But that is actually from the governor's office that this was a paramedic.
And it's really interesting. Something else I think will come out too about this is we're talking about the rendering aid part of this. Is it's pretty standard procedure. We are told that when responders are on the scene, they usually don't render aid until they know it's secure. So this sounds like it was a very active, very violent scene.
And it must have been very quickly because absolutely, in descriptions that I've seen on scenes that I have been on, that you have been on, the paramedics always hold back and it's cleared for the police officers. Obviously, when there are police officers down, the paramedics, those are their partners. They are going to do everything they can, and one must think that this paramedic certainly ran into harm's way in the most courageous of circumstances, and obviously lost his or her life as well. We're being told that the cars are being moved into what seems some kind of formation here. The bodies of the officers are being brought to the medical examiner's office. The thorough examination has to be done to determine exactly how they died. This is very important in terms of any kind of prosecution, any kind of examination that occurs, any kind of trial that has occurred. Just because we're told that one person responsible for this has died, we don't know if there are others responsible. We also were told that there were other people in the home, and we were told that there were children in the home at the time. We want to get details on that. There are so many unanswered questions.
So many questions.
So many questions. And these domestic calls often occur, well, they occur any night of the week, but often on weekends. We hear them even more often right now. But
we're going to have to, one thing that will come up later as we look into this investigation is, you know, it's standard for police officers to wear vests. So we can only assume that could have been the case right there.
Right.
We know for paramedics, I was doing some research this morning, it's a choice depending on the agency you work at. Some have the choice of wearing vests. So we don't know if that was an option
Right.
in this case,
And also,
or if it would have mattered.
If it would have mattered, and also almost always police officers in our metro area are wearing vests when they respond to a call.
Right.
I will say I have been told that semi-automatic fire and some gunfire can penetrate even the toughest of police vests. So that is no
That's a possibility.
safeguard. And normally in these very tense scenes, you have paramedics also wearing some kind of body armor. Obviously, that was not effective. We've got some statements here. I was mentioning this. These very sad statements from all over the metro. Representative Pete Stauber from the 8th Congressional District up in Duluth. Devastating news coming out of Burnsville this morning. My prayers are with fallen officers and paramedics, their families, and the entire Burnsville community. This is a terribly sad reminder of the grave danger posed to our brave law enforcement officers on, and I might add, on every single call that they go to.
Yep.
Representative Angie Craig also shared her thoughts on X, saying, "I'm devastated to hear the news coming out of Burnsville this morning." This is her district. Most of Burnsville is her district, so this is Angie Craig's district most likely. She says, "I'm devastated to hear the news coming out of Burnsville this morning and remain in close contact with local officials and law enforcement to offer any federal support they need. I'm keeping the Burnsville PD, first responders, their loved ones, and the entire community in my thoughts." Again, that's Representative Angie Craig, who is represents Burnsville.
Yeah, that's her area. Yeah,
that's
her area. And Esme, too, I'm getting some information, too, now that at 4 o'clock we will have the press conference. It's going to be at Burnsville City Hall. They're going to give information at that time. And if I could say there's just a tiny little squeak of good news that they are confirming, is that there are no more threats right now, that the situation is no longer active. They have confirmed that. And at 4 o'clock, I think we're going to get these answers, you know.
Well, that's very good news, because we've been showing you shots of that neighborhood on 33rd Avenue in Burnsville all morning long, and it's an armed camp, which is obviously what needs to be done. But I guess they're saying that they have cleared the scene, so that's something that is. The ATF and the BCA are investigating. Obviously, when an officer is killed or when their officer perhaps fired shots, we do not know if the officer fired the shots,
we don't
any
know.
shots, but the BCA
State
takes
agencies
over.
come in, right?
State agencies and federal agencies come in, and that is certainly what has happened here.
And I want to show people, too, the image we're looking at right now, because I was out there all morning at HCMC, and just like you were saying, Esme, when an officer is injured, they're sent to HCMC. That is the county hospital. That is level 1 trauma. That is where you go for the most emergent of care. So we know that they went there, and you can see right now this processional lining up of officers from all over. I mean, when I was there in Inver Grove Heights, Woodbury, Minneapolis, St. Paul, like everywhere you can think of, people are just coming together. And a lot of them have said, we're just getting texts, we're showing up, we've got to protect our area, but within reason. They said, we're going to be there to show support. And the support is not going to go anywhere. They're going to guard the bodies until they are buried. I mean, this is a show of honor, a show of support, and really great grief that we're seeing right here. They're lining up, and then they're going to drive off. Now, I have talked to another agency who told me that it is standard procedure in a case like this to try to get the bodies to the medical examiner for understandable reasons.
As quickly as possible, yes.
For the investigation,
yes.
Right?
And they have to do that because we don't know if there's going to be a prosecution in this case. Certainly there's going to be an investigation on how this happened, how the person received the weapon, how the person who did the shooting, you know, what his story was or her story was. Again, we don't know any of these details, and that's why we want to let you know that there is going to be a 4 o'clock news conference, which is going to have the details of this just unbelievable tragedy with 2 officers killed in the line of duty this morning in Burnsville, responding to a call, and a firefighter paramedic also responding, trying to aid one of the fallen officers, and that person is killed. It is just unimaginable what has happened in Burnsville this morning to our community. And again, it's just a reminder how for law enforcement, things can turn on a dime.
Yeah, turn on a dime. And we were in the newsroom this morning. I mean, we both come in very early, and we sort of first heard on the scanners something serious is going on. They were calling for ambulance after ambulance. And it has turned into literally worst case scenario.
Right, right. And again, we do know, as we've been telling you in the past few minutes, we do know that the person who shot these officers and killed them is dead. That is the word we're getting in our ear from our newsroom. So that presumes that perhaps just one suspect, which one might hope. And also we heard that the scene at 33rd Avenue in Burnsville is contained, which means it's under control, that it's no longer an active scene.
Because I know people in that area, for very understandable reasons, were wanting to know if there was a threat still going on. And so we have been told that there is not a threat going on. That was when we were told that Burnsville are going to give us an update. 4 o'clock today, you know we will be there. We will be streaming this. We will have this on TV because there's so much interest in this case. I mean, everyone, whether or not you are a law enforcement officer, you are in the community, and that's who you would call. Right. So
absolutely.
Like it just affects everyone. Everyone is affected by this. These are the people who would have answered your call.
Absolutely. And Susan, we've got some statements from police officers. And when we started seeing these statements from police officers, from other police agencies on social network, we realized how serious this was.
Yeah.
Minneapolis Police Chief Brian O'Hara, please keep Burnsville Police Department in your prayers this morning. That was much earlier. It was several hours ago. The Olmsted County Sheriff's Office, that's the Rochester area. Our thoughts and prayers are with the families of the officers shot and the entire Burnsville Police Department. Maple Grove Police Department, please keep the Burnsville Police and Fire Departments in your thoughts and prayers during this very tragic time. Washington County Sheriff's Office said, we are deeply saddened to hear the loss of our partners in Burnsville today. There are no words.
There are no words.
There are no words.
I mean, that's what it comes down to.
The Plymouth Police Department, our thoughts and prayers are with the Burnsville Police Department this morning. The tragedy is heartfelt. St. Paul's Division of the ATF, which we're told is also responding. ATF stands for the Federal Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. This says ATF agents are responding to a scene in Burnsville, Minnesota, where there have been reports of officers involved in a domestic-related shooting. Information is limited at this time. This was a domestic call, and while that may sound like it might not be that serious or dangerous, officers and statistics will show this is can be the most volatile of all calls and the most dangerous.
Our domestic violence calls.
Right.
Yes, we did know that. Like, we saw that that's why they were there originally. And we just know that from the start, there was just a lot around this case. I mean, we knew that there were so many people responding, and we didn't know what happened. But when we found out, we thought, this is the worst. And look at all the other people who are showing up for support. I mean, this image right here, this is outside of HCMC. You can see officers from all over the metro. They've lined up, and it looks like they are going to escort the bodies. And the bodies will not be left alone until they are buried.
Okay, we do have a live picture from Minnetonka where we're told that there is a fire truck with a flag, fire truck holding the flag.
Yeah.
Over that looks like Interstate 394. I could be wrong though.
And we know there is,
or 62 it says.
Got it. And we know there's a medical examiner's office in that area.
Right. It is heart-wrenching to see this kind of an image. The flag hanging low.
We'll see a lot of
we
those.
All are hanging low.
Absolutely.
And so sad.
And one of the things too, you know, you just read through all those comments locally. I know we are going to hear from people around the country on this.
Right. And this is, and when I read these statements of the people who've responded, the politicians that have responded, that is not all of them. That is just on this little
just
one
a
page
few of them.
Here. We don't mean to seem that others have not responded. The procession, we are told, is moving from Hennepin County Medical Center, and you can see it. It's difficult to see with the shadows in the canyon. About a
15-minute, 20-minute drive expected there.
It's right there, yes. It's not very far at all.
I was looking up statistics this morning about shootings of officers. So far this year in the United States, there have been 16. 4 of them were by gunfire. This, of course, the first one in Minnesota we've seen. You know, we've had several locally last year in Wisconsin. This unfortunately isn't new. One thing that I do not remember covering in my career, you'll have to tell me, is when a paramedic was killed.
I don't. I'm sure that it has happened because their jobs are so dangerous. I do not remember a local paramedic covering one being killed. I will tell you, the medical examiner's office used to be right across the street from Hennepin Health.
Yeah, right by U.S. Bank.
Yeah,
yep.
but it was moved in the last couple of years out to the old location of the county home school, what used to be sort of a juvenile detention center, so that's out further in the county. I don't have the exact address, but maybe somebody can pull that up for me. But that is where the Hennepin County Medical Examiner's office is now located.
In the Minnetonka area.
Yeah, and it is a ways out of downtown, so they are bringing those bodies of the fallen to that office for the examination. Otherwise, in past years, it has been right there, right at Hennepin Healthcare, but it's a state-of-the-art facility, one that has the latest in forensics and ballistic tests, all of those things to determine how these people died. We know that they died, and for the future safety of other officers and law enforcement, that's why they do these kinds of investigations. Again, we've been told, and we're looking at this procession here, sort of disappearing into the shadows there in downtown Minneapolis, that this procession will escort these officers and the paramedic firefighter to the medical examiner's office, which is located, I believe, in the Minnetonka area. Yeah, you're right.
That's right.
Out in the area where the old county home school used to be, to their relatively new facility. They have been there for a few years.
And you can see one car after another. It's hard to see from this shot, but I was at the ground at the hospital all morning. And I mean, Inver Grove Heights, Woodbury, Park Police, Metro Transit, all of these different agencies are showing up with their marked cars is a symbol of support. And it's a really interesting sort of paradigm when you think about the emotions for law enforcement officers who are showing up here in this moment, because they have to do their job. They're used to the heavy stuff. They're used to the serious stuff. But you can't help but think that could have been any of them, right?
And you know, when there is a big incident, and you and I have been on the scene of so many in the suburbs over the years, you always get support from the neighboring police departments. So this is something that these police departments work very carefully together. Now, this is the procession heading down. It looks like this might be going on to 394. Maybe the producers can help me here. The procession moving very, very slowly through downtown Minneapolis, the outskirts of downtown Minneapolis, and it is, as I said, the monitors are a little distance away, but moving slowly. It looks like those are buses, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
But
it looks like that there. What we do know for sure is that they're not going to leave the bodies alone. I just found that very powerful, hearing that. I've seen that before when I've covered the death of police officers in Wisconsin over the past year, and they said, we will not leave the bodies alone. We will stand guard outside in the cold 24/7.
Okay, they're actually going down 35W.
35W right there.
And this traffic camera, I think, is going to show it. It looks like they are moving very slowly, judging from the traffic on the other side. Here is the traffic camera image, and that is definitely
cruiser
35.
after cruiser after cruiser. And maybe you can see, maybe you can't from here, but just all the different cities. I mean, you name it. They have come, they have shown up to show their support.
Right. Let's take a look, if we can, at that traffic camera again, and just, if we can, I don't know if we can lose that banner there, but how moving is it to see those
there you go.
Those police officers, that long line of squads. Obviously 35W has been shut down for this. The sadness is just overwhelming to think that something like this could happen so quickly, so easily, and 3 lives could be lost. 3 lives who are out there protecting us, taking care of all of us, could be lost so quickly. It is just a devastating situation.
And every one of those officers and each of those cruisers got a text or they got a call this morning, and they saw that. That's how several people told me that's how I was waking up this morning, Susan Elizabeth, was I got a text that one of our brother's sister died in the line of duty.
Right.
And now 3 we've learned. I mean, it was hard for us to believe when we got the news internally,
you know,
too.
I was calling people to confirm this tragic news, and I didn't believe it. I thought this just can't be.
Right,
And,
all 3.
And it is tragically the case. Here again, you see that dramatic shot of 35W with the cars moving very slowly down the interstate, the entire interstate blocked off in honor of these fallen officers, in honor of that fallen paramedic. What a tragedy. What a tragedy we see sort of leaving our city and headed to the medical examiner's office. And the number of cars involved, as you said, from all these different agencies.
All the different agencies.
Paying tribute to the ultimate sacrifice that we don't, I guess, honor enough, because this is an example of how it could happen at any day, at any moment,
minute.
Anywhere.
And on that note, Esme, for anybody who may be joining us, let's kind of walk through what we heard this morning and what we knew. I mean, when we came into work, we heard something on the scanner, something's going on in Burnsville. Then we were told pretty quickly, hey, there's a situation that's active, and it was very clear to us, which isn't always the case, weapons are involved, and this is an act. This is something serious. Then our crews get there, see the SWAT team, and you started getting just horrific information.
Right. Yeah. It was just before 6 o'clock when our morning producer heard on the scanner shots fired, and then the call of many officers to the scene. And you actually were there during our 6 a.m. show working the phones to try and get us some information, which you did. I don't know, did you speak to the dispatch office to get that skeletal information?
Yes, our producer figured out from the dispatcher. She got a call in, and they pretty quickly said, we're not going to tell you much, but weapons are involved, this is active. And that's not normally the answer we get. I mean, usually these situations are somewhat contained, but this was definitely active. And then when our photographer got to the scene and saw what appears to be gunshots in a SWAT vehicle, I mean, that is about as violent a scene as you can imagine.
And I'm told that we are seeing a fire vehicle on the bridge there. And the on-ramps are closed on 35W. Obviously, no one is getting on 35W at the moment. Please stay clear of this scene if you can, perhaps, and you're in a position to get on one of those bridges and honor these fallen officers. To see this procession and how moving it is to see it come down 35W with the skyline in the backdrop there.
And it's a lot of unity in that shot when you look at it. You know, from the ground, from the hospital, I could see so many agencies, Woodbury, Park Police, Inver Grove Heights, people from all over the metro coming together. And you can see that unity right there under the skyline of people all over the metro are sharing this pain. This is everyone's pain.
And I can't help but think, as I look at the skyline and I look at this slow procession, what a beautiful day. Crystal clear, crystal clear. You can see everything, see downtown. And this is the sight that we are seeing, this procession down 35W. You can see traffic slowing in the southbound lanes heading into, or the northbound lanes, excuse me. The procession is heading southbound. The lanes of traffic on the right-hand side of your screen are the northbound lanes heading into downtown Minneapolis, and you can tell that people are slowing to watch. I think word has spread extraordinarily quickly. This is a weekend. I know a lot of people maybe have been out. They may be coming back into town.
Right, and it's all over social media for very important reason too. And just reminding people too who may not know everything that happened. We're waiting to hear more at 4 o'clock. But this started as a domestic call, a situation in what appears to be just a little Burnsville neighborhood. And then as soon as we got to the scene, you know, we saw there were cars everywhere. We were pushed away. And one of the most startling images from the day, the SWAT vehicle, our photojournalist saw, right?
Right. Where the windows of one of the SWAT vehicles looked like they'd been shot out. I couldn't tell if they'd actually penetrated the glass. They certainly shattered the glass of an armored personnel carrier that was bringing officers into this scene. You know, you can't help but think as you look at this procession that people in that procession, what must be going through their minds. Certainly many of them know those individuals who have died. We have not had the names released, but they must know them, and they may have been on the scene, and they must be also thinking, if they're law enforcement, that it could have been them.
Absolutely, it's personal to every single one of them.
It's personal, and it's personal because, as you've been saying, there is a brotherhood there.
Yeah.
What a tragedy. And you can see buses too. There were a lot of people, officers gathered at downtown, at Hennepin Healthcare, to pay their respects to these officers. And whenever an officer is injured and brought to Hennepin Healthcare, even if it's not life-threatening, there's always a crowd of officers from really all over the area
like
that come rushing there just instantly there.
And it's not just the people who in uniform were touched, but also medical professionals. Look at that. I literally have chills right now. You can see them paying their respects right there.
Lining up as the procession is about to take off.
You can see at HCMC just right there how they felt it too.
And those are the medical personnel who I'm sure tried desperately to save the lives of these 3 individuals.
No
this
doubt.
is the best of the best at Hennepin Healthcare, where you've got
level
the level
1 trauma.
They are used to gunshot wounds. Tragically, they are used to it. They are used to handling. They are used to people flatlining and reviving them. They are the best, and tragically, they were not able to do that. But a very moving picture to see.
So moving.
Those medical personnel lining up there to say goodbye.
Like you were saying, the medical personnel there, right there, they are so used to handling these things. We know it must have been a dire situation when they got there. We know that for there to be bullet holes in the SWAT vehicle. Let's talk about the questions we are hoping to get answered at 4 o'clock at this press conference. What do you want to know, first of all?
Well, I want to know what happened. I mean, what was the call? What was the call, and what happened?
We know it was domestic which can mean a fight.
Yeah, and was there something that may have minimized the concern of how severe the threat was? We did hear that there were children inside this home. Did that somehow and I don't mean to speculate here, but I'm just wondering how could it have happened, because police officers are so careful at all times of trying to do, be careful about going through these situations to make sure. And also I want to know what this person has died who shot these 3 individuals.
How did they die?
How did they die, and what were they doing? What in the name of God were they doing?
It's also peculiar too, just a side note to those main questions, is the fact that it's standard protocol for the scene to be secured or seemingly secured before a paramedic would go in to render aid. So that part of the story makes you wonder too, what was happening on this scene. And
we certainly do not in any way, we're not casting any aspersions on the victims here at all, but this is really so unusual. So unusual. And Burnsville, an excellent veteran police department. They are a well-staffed police department.
Female chief, who we've reported on multiple times.
Yes, very good police department, as are all the Metro police departments, and they work so well with all the Metro police departments around them. They have relationships with Bloomington, Edina.
They were on scene today.
Shakopee, Inver Grove, as you said, the Southern Metro. And this is the scene here.
And so what we do know is there was a domestic call. We know that officers showed up. We know that somehow 3 people lost their lives, 2 officers, 1 a firefighter / medic. And then we also know that the person they believe did the shooting is passed away too.
That's the information from our newsroom.
So those are kind of our main.
And we have a lot of people working on this, gathering information. So that is the latest, and that has to be a relief, at least to those people in the neighborhood, to those law enforcement who are still on the scene. I'm sure still gathering evidence
and wondering
from the scene.
was protected in this incident. We know that people lost lives, but we are hearing from neighbors that there were several kids in that home. So you wonder whose lives were saved by these.
Yeah, we did hear from neighbors, and obviously these kinds of details will be confirmed. One neighbor told our reporter El Mose that there were 7 children in the home. And we don't know the ages, but obviously they apparently were unharmed. And that speaks for itself. They were unharmed. And these 3 law enforcement, 1 paramedic, 2 officers have lost their lives.
And I want to know that too. I mean, you and I are often at these press conferences and thinking of questions we would ask right away. Yeah, I want to know exactly what the original call was for, and then how it escalated to this point.
And also what kind of weapon was used. Because it certainly...
Because we assume it's pretty standard procedure that people wear vests.
Right.
So
also,
you wonder what kind of weapon.
Yeah, was it a semi-automatic weapon to take out 3 responders like that?
But that would be a question you would ask. And the question too that I want to know so much is, I wonder if they're going to give it to us at 4 o'clock. It may be a few days for very important reasons, but I want to know about these officers. I want to know their stories. I want to know who loves them and who's aching over them, and about the paramedic, and just hearing and honoring them. And you better believe at WCCO that's going to be a big part of our coverage too, is we will be honoring their lives this week. We will be giving you the information on what happened, but we also want you to know who they were.
And we know this, they are our neighbors.
Yeah,
they are our neighbors. They could be the person living next door to you, or to me, or to Susan Elizabeth. They are regular folks, just like you and I, but in their jobs, they are superheroes because they respond and they rush to danger, not away from it. And certainly the story of the firefighter being shot and killed and responding to trying to help the fallen officer is just adds to the heartbreak here.
Because I'm not sure, let's go for that part again. I'm not sure people know about the rendering aid element. Tell us what you know. What were you told about
I was told that the firefighter, the governor has referred to this paramedic as a firefighter, and we talked about the fact that they
cross-trained.
Cross-trained, that's the correct thing. But I was told that the paramedic was killed as he was responding and rendering aid to one of the injured officers. Obviously running without a concern for himself to try and aid the officer down.
That just gives you chills, Esme. I mean, when you talk about true service and putting your life
look at this procession
on the line from someone else.
Look at
all those cars. There's law enforcement cars from all over showing up.
And you can see
support.
The traffic on the other side slowing down. People have to know what this is, but this is remarkable. I don't think I've ever seen this to this extent in the metro. Certainly we've had processions, but the long, long procession, and this was heading on 62, our director told us. Is it heading west on 62, I assume?
Well, we're waiting to hear,
We'll get the word on that.
West.
But again, they are heading out to the medical.
Look at all those cars.
And west on 62 to the medical examiner's office, which, as I said, for years and years and years was in downtown Minneapolis. And then a number of years ago, they moved it out to where the old home county school used to be, a juvenile center for kids. That is now vacant, and so they installed this really state-of-the-art medical examiner's office.
And speaking with a law enforcement expert this morning too, they made it clear to me that in cases like this, of course there's so many emotions, but investigation wise, you need to get to the medical examiner. This is very key, is to get that part of the investigation done.
Right.
Highway 100 now.
This is Highway 100
for this processional.
Highway 62 at 100.
At 100, they're going towards the Southwest Metro.
This is just heartbreak.
And you can see the cars right there, Esme. That's a big visual of support. When I was at HDMC, where they were clearly taken to today, you could see there was a Burnsville ambulance. And it was parked right in front of the ambulance vestibule at HCMC. There were 2 of them, back by back. And all these cars from different agencies just surrounded them And it was sort of this physical show of support, but it was also an emotional one, just like what we're seeing now, a processional right there. And again, we want to remind people, if they're just joining us, that we know 2 officers have lost their life and a firefighter/medic this morning responding to a domestic call in Burnsville. We still have many questions we're hoping to get answered in the next few hours.
Right. We hopefully will get as many as we can get answered, but what heartbreak to see that procession and the mourning that has just begun. And we know that there are going to be many days of mourning and an eternity of grief for the families and loved ones of these individuals. One cannot even imagine what they are going through at this time.
And we know that you have been on Twitter, social media. I mean, support is coming out from every angle. This is not a partisan. I mean, people from everywhere are just showing their heartache and their support right now.
Absolutely.
Which is a powerful moment of unity amidst this.
Yeah, and I was talking to one officer and then also talking to some lawmakers earlier this morning. There was apparently the Minnesota Peace and Police Officers Association had their big convention and meeting just yesterday. So it was a kind of a positive, upbeat meeting. Wow. People were meeting, getting together, talking about advances in law enforcement.
The timing, wow.
Yeah, meeting friends, from other departments, that kind of thing, coming off a very nice weekend, a very nice gathering.
Yes.
And then this so early this morning.
Yes. And again, what we do know is that this started as a domestic call in a Burnsville neighborhood. We had a crew out there this morning, and they realized it was a pretty serious scene when they saw what appeared to be gunshots in a SWAT vehicle.
Right.
So the escalation in this sounds like was very high. We know that the person officers believe did this has also lost their life,
and
right?
You saw that SWAT vehicle, we saw it from the back, kind of retreating, moving backwards from the scene. Perhaps that is when it was actually shot. We're following this procession as it heads towards the Hennepin County Medical Examiner's office in Minnetonka.
From downtown
HCMC,
Minneapolis, which is the hospital where officers are taken when they're injured in the line of duty, right? And when you've covered these stories, that's the go-to place.
But the somberness, the sadness of this slow-moving procession, moving in grief through our community.
And it looks like people have stopped on the overpass
people have stopped
right there.
on the overpasses to
just
honor
to pay
those.
their respect, pulled over.
This is truly heartbreak here, but people are paying the respects. You're absolutely right, Susan Elizabeth, on those overpasses to honor these individuals. And obviously there will be much more to honor these individuals, but it's a reminder that we need to honor these individuals every day, because every day they're responding to a situation that may seem
standard,
trivial, not that big a deal, and suddenly
it turns into this.
It is.
Which is life-changing for so many people. And we've seen the brotherhood, the sisterhood here locally. You can see other fire trucks right there making their way towards the medical examiner's office. But we know that this is going to be an outpouring nationally. I mean, I've already seen on social media people really reaching out, because people across the country really show up. I have no doubt as we cover this week, I mean, there will be people from all over coming here to these services, coming here to show respect. And one of the most powerful sort of images of respect, aside from this processional you're seeing right now, is I talked to one officer this morning who said they're with the honor guard with St. Paul Police, and they said, hey, we're getting our plans together. Everyone's trying to figure out how are we going to make sure after the bodies are in place that they are not left alone for a moment. I mean, they will stand guard in the cold outside in Minnesota in the winter to show their support. They will not leave these brothers and sisters alone. And
for those of you in Burnsville, I think you can expect to see other departments patrolling your neighborhoods. This is what happens. This is what happens when people are, fallen officers are replaced by those who are neighboring, so the officers themselves in that department can grieve. And also, we're talking about paramedics, and I think we often don't really think of them as being in the line of danger. But they are in the line of danger.
They
and certainly,
very much are. And I think this brings to, as the weeks follow out and we look at what we can learn from this incident, that will come up. I was looking back at policies from 2015 of, hey, there needs to be, it was discussed in the legislature, there needs to be more protection for these people. They're at the scenes too.
Right.
They're right there when things are active at times. And there's always an effort to secure the scene.
Right.
But like today, I suppose you can't know for sure how secure it is. There's still a level of danger that they're in.
Right, and anytime there's a violent incident, a shooting, anywhere
right away,
in our
called.
area that we report on the police activity. What we don't mention is that there are paramedics who respond to that scene too. Presumably, in most cases, the scene is supposed to be cleared and safe before they get out of their vehicles and do that. Obviously, that was not the case here, but it's a reminder of the danger they put themselves in on a daily basis, on an every call basis as well.
Every day. And we want to tell people, again, kind of what we know how this started this morning. I mean, we heard rumblings. It was before 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock, I think, when we were starting to hear something's going on over the scanners. And we started making calls.
Susan Elizabeth, there are firefighters on top of their truck
just
there.
paying respect.
Oh my goodness.
Just on that overpass right there, paying respect. And it all started from a domestic call. We know that much. And we know that there was the SWAT team called in. We know there were multiple ambulances called in. What appears to be gunshots in a SWAT vehicle. And then we know that 2 officers and 1 medic / firefighter lost their life. And then we got information here within the last hour that the person they believe the person who did this is
the person who shot and killed these officers is dead. That is what we are hearing from our newsroom. They are getting that from the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, who I'm sure is one of the leads.
That.
Yes, they have confirmed that.
Because this is going to be a complicated investigation that no doubt the state is involved in. So we know the BCA is in on this.
Especially with the person who did the shooting and all these victims dead. But yes, the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, which is no doubt the lead investigators in this particular investigation, has confirmed that the person responsible for this shooting has died. We do not know how that person died, if they were injured by police fire, if they took their own lives. We're hoping to find that out.
And it wasn't long after you got that information that we also got information basically saying to the people of Burnsville, to the people of that area who have to be so rattled right now, that there is no longer an active threat in that area.
Right.
Because there was for many hours this morning.
Yeah. And I think
it was very active.
Very active, and I think what we're probably going to hear about is the hours between when the shooting happened in very early morning and then that 1 o'clock time period when we got sort of the all clear there, because obviously they had to make an entrance into that house. And we really haven't gotten a shot of the house that was involved. This is a neighborhood that was involved.
But they were pointing towards sort of a greenhouse you can see in the background right there. That was earlier this morning. And this what our photojournalist said, that a lot of the activity was surrounding.
Right.
But then they got pushed back farther and farther. So that's why we only have these sort of images we can show you.
Yeah, and obviously the danger is so very real for obviously
everyone,
journalists.
even, absolutely, for anyone who returned unseen. But the basic details, again, going over them that we know, started with the domestic.
Right. And then started with a domestic and then somehow escalated into 2 officers being shot and killed, and then a firefighter / paramedic trying to give aid to one of the fallen officers. He is shot. What we have heard from the beginning here, and we're trying to nail this down, is that there were children inside the home, that they are okay. And I want to get more details on that before we go too far into this, but what a testament to law enforcement, if in fact that is the case, that you had children who were inside this home, in harm's way, in danger. Their lives were at stake. Mm-hmm. And those 2 officers and that firefighter gave their lives protecting them. And that's a remarkable,
true sacrifice.
Remarkable degree of heroism.
It really is. I think that's a perfect word, is heroism in this moment. And we have had crews on the ground there. They're talking to neighbors. They're trying to understand the story on a deeper level. And they have been reporting that there were children in the house. So we wonder who was protected in all this? You know, who did they die protecting?
Now, what we see is that the cars have begun arriving at the medical center, or medical examiner's office, which is out in Minnetonka. There is a brick building in the background that I believe is still the remnants of the old home school that was out there. So it was sort of a juvenile detention center that is no longer used. And then just beyond that, there is the medical examiner's office, the new medical examiner's office, which, you know, for years and years, it was downtown Minneapolis and there weren't a lot of upgrades, and this has been upgraded, and there we go, right into it there.
Van
yeah, that is the building.
As it enters.
As it enters there. That is the Hennepin County Medical Examiner's Office, where those autopsies will be conducted, and at some point there will be a procession out of the medical examiner's office.
And the whole time this is going on, there are going to be officers who stay there. They say it's an honor guard, a show, a salute, an honor to these people who lost their lives in the most noble of ways.
Okay. All right, we are going to wrap it here as we saw those images of the cars going into the medical examiner's office. We're going to pick our coverage up at 4 o'clock whenever that news conference begins, because the news conference, I'm sure, is going to provide a lot more answers as to what led to this tragedy and more details about these heroes
and who they were. We cannot wait to tell their stories, and we will be doing that this week. That will be a big part of our coverage here at CCO.
And tragically, we will be telling their stories because they paid the ultimate price for keeping what sounds like a number of children safe. All right, so with Susan Elizabeth Littlefield, I'm Esme Murphy. Thank you so much for joining us. Stay tuned for more breaking news on this tragic story coming up on CBS News Minnesota and WCCO TV and WCCO.com.